continue with our revision, there is one chapter that everybody is speculating that it might come in the board exam. So I don't know whether it will come or not, but let's revise the chapter. The chapter is A Horse and Two Goats. Now it's a lengthy chapter and I hope you have read it well. There are 100 more questions I could have prepared on the chapter, but hoping that you have already done your part of the revision, let's see how well we can attempt these questions. Okay, so let's begin. Question 1. What was Kritham famous for? Kritham was famous for its chaste Tamil. The people spoke in chaste Tamil. Chaste Tamil means pure Tamil. Describe the big house. So you could write, it was built with brick and cement, painted brilliant yellow and blue, had gorgeous carvings of gods and gargoyles on its balustrade. It was known as the big house. Describe the other houses in the village. They were made of bamboo thatch, straw, mud, and other unspecified material. Why did Muni repeat the list that his wife gave? He repeated the list in order not to forget anything. Where was the shop? The shop was in the 3rd street. Why did Muni laugh inordinately? Inordinately means why did he laugh more than necessary? Because when he went to the shopkeeper called him a young man. So he laughed in order to please the shopkeeper. Okay. How did this affect the shopkeeper? The shopkeeper was completely won over. It says that this completely won the shopman over because his sense of humor was appreciated. Why would Muni humor the shopkeeper? Muni was a poor man. He would humor the shopkeeper in the hope that he would be able to take a few items on credit, promising to repay the money later. How old was Muni? He was, according to the shopkeeper, he was about 70 years old. How did Muni calculate his age? He did not know his date of birth. He calculated his age on the basis of a famine that had taken place. It says from the time of the great famine. Why were his calculations tentative? Why were they not sure? His calculations were tentative because he says that so many famines were occurring that you could not accurately count your age. Where did Muni sit while his goats grazed? He sat on the pedestal of the statue, or he sat on the pedestal of the horse statue. What is a pedestal? It's a base on which you would place a statue, or rather it's a raised platform. What was the advantage of this place? What was the advantage of this place? He could watch the highway, see the lorries and the buses pass by. It gave him a sense of belonging to a larger world. How did the broad pedestal prove to be useful? So it was broad enough. He could move around as the sun traveled high up in the sky, and when it was right over his head, he could crouch under the belly of the horse and be in the shade. What did the vandals of the village do? Who are vandals? Those who indulge in damaging the property of others. So what did the vandals of the village do? It says they gashed tree trunks with knives, they toppled off milestones, they inscribed lurid designs on walls. And why was the horse untouched? Why did they not damage the horse? Because it was on the border of the village. It wasn't within the village. What did Muni's goats graze on? They grazed on cactus and lantana bushes. Why was Muni no longer intrigued by the novelty of seeing a vehicle? So it says over here on page 56, he was no longer intrigued because work was going on at the source of the river and there was an assortment of people and traffic that went past him, and he would watch everything carefully and then describe it to his wife. What gave rise to a lot of gossip and speculation in Kritam? A dead body had been found. It was mutilated, found under a tamarind tree. It lay between the border of Kritam and Kupam, the neighboring village. So people were gossiping about it. How did people of Muni's village lose their cattle? So how did they lose their cattle? They either lost it to thieves or they would be carried away by chacals and cheetahs. Then the next question. Who helped the villagers to nab the thief? The priest. How was the thief caught? The priest was able to see the face of the criminal in the flame of the camphor fire. Okay. It says the priest could see in the camphor flame the face of the thief. So it talks about the ignorance that's rampant in Indian villages because of illiteracy. Why did the foreigner wish he had a tape recorder? So the foreigner was trying to flatter Muni and get him to sell the horse. So he tells him that your language sounds very sweet. He says over here that I get a kick out of every word that you speak. So he was trying to flatter him, and therefore he says, I wish I had a tape recorder so that I could record what you were saying. Okay. Then the next question. How did Muni spend his childhood? He did not go to school. He worked in the fields. What could he not do as a result? He could not take a secular education. It talks about the Indian villages where there was a class system that existed. It was only the Brahmins who would go to school, while children like Muni were expected to work in the fields. How did the foreigner plan to make room for the horse in his living room? He said he would move the bookcase and make room for the horse. The horse would have the best house in the US. What did the foreigner tell Muni about his business? He said that I am a modest businessman. I am not a millionaire. I can only afford 60 minutes of television, which means he could only pay for 2 minutes of advertising time on television. Why? Why did he say this? Because he was trying to bargain with Muni, trying to get him to sell the horse to him at a cheaper price. How did he try to convince Muni that he was a modest businessman? I just said he told Muni that I could afford only 2 minutes a day. However, if his sales graph goes up, he would sponsor a 1-hour show regularly. What caused the mutual mystification? Mutual mystification. Why was there a confusion between the two, between Muni and the foreigner? Because the foreigner spoke in English while Muni spoke in Tamil. What was Muni's dream of a lifetime? His dream was to set up a thatched roof, spread a gunny sack on the ground, and display on it fried nuts, colored sweets, grey coconut for thirsty and famished wayfarers, that is, travelers. He laughed at his own joke. Who? Who laughed at his own joke? It was Muni who laughed at his joke. What was the joke? Here, there is a typing error. What was the joke? He had told the foreigner that take the goats first, let me leave and then take the goats away, or else these goats are so attached to me that they will follow me to Yamlok. So he found that very funny and he refers to it as a joke. How did Muni carry his cash? He tucked the cash in his dhoti near his waist, the same way Sibya carried the blue bead. What did his wife accuse him of? Of stealing. Why? Because he had said that he had got the 100 rupees in lieu of the goats that he had sold, but the goats had come back. Explain courtesies of the season. Now here, the season refers to the season of buying and selling. So the foreigner wanted to buy the horse and he thought it would be a sign of good manners to offer a cigarette to Muni. So he was observing the courtesies of the season. Next, balancing of the credits and debits of conversational exchange. So credit, when credit and debit, these are terms used for you could say a bank account. So when you debit, you take away something. When you credit, you add something. So balancing of the credits and debits of conversational exchange means when you add to the conversation. So what did Muni do? There's a line which says he chatted away in a spirit of balancing of the credits and debits of conversational exchange in order to, and said in order to be on the credit side, in order to add to the conversation. To be on the credit side, he wanted to add to the conversation. Bearish trend in the market, so it refers to bulls and bears. So when they say bearish trend tendency, it means when the prices are low. So the line says the foreigner immediately, in order to take immediate advantage of the bearish trend, that is the low price in the market, he flourished a 100 rupee currency note. So he thought the price was less and he quickly made an offer to buy the goats. What did Muni carry with him as he took his goats out to graze? So the answer is in the beginning of the chapter, where it says he carried with him a crook at the end of a bamboo pole. What purpose did it serve? He would use that crook to snap foliage from the avenue trees, the trees that grew on the sides, and use the foliage to feed his flock. Why did the money lender get angry at the sight of Muni? Muni says somebody had taken away the money lender's pumpkins with the creeper, and the money lender thought that it was Muni and the goats, and so he would fly into a rage at the sight of Muni. Write down all the different strategies adopted by the foreigner to flatter Muni and get him to sell the horse. Now, this actually could come as an 8-mark question. So what were the different strategies he adopted? You could start from the very beginning, where he smiles ingratiatingly, he folds his hand in a namaste, he praises the language that Muni uses, saying, I get a kick out of every word I hear, I wish I had a tape recorder. He offers him a cigarette, then he praises his teeth, then he also, what are the other things he says? He convinces him that the horse will have the best place in my living room. He will move out the bookcase. He also pays attention to the goats. He pats the head of these goats, trying to show that he was interested in them. Then he also says he offered to chop wood for him, saying he was very good at chopping driftwood. These are some of the things that he does in order to flatter Muni and get him to sell the horse. Highlight the difference in the two cultures. So there's a big difference. On one hand side, we have the Western world with all its affluence, and we have the Indian rustic side where people are ignorant, people are illiterate, irrational, they are taken advantage of. Then there is the foreign on one hand who cannot live without a day, a few couple of hours without electricity. He talks about no electricity for a couple of hours where he works. And there is Muni on the other hand who possibly doesn't have electricity in his village. Then there is this foreigner who chops wood as a hobby. For Muni on the other hand, it's a struggle living a daily existence. So different cultures, you need to elaborate. In your opinion, what makes the story amusing? It's a personal response. Give examples to illustrate your answer. It could be anything, but write something that is relevant to the answer. Describe the horse and the statue. So again, this could come as a 4-mark question. So when you're describing the horse, there's a detailed description of the horse. It says it was life-size, molded out of clay, baked, burnt, brightly colored, reared it proudly, prancing its forelegs in the air, flourishing its tail in a loop. And then it says about the warrior, the horse, and it should be the horse and the warrior. So the warrior had skite-like mustachios, bulging eyes, and aquiline nose, and it had a multicolored sash around its waist. So take note of all the different details that are given. Okay. So the story, A Horse and Two Goats, is a lengthy one with a lot of description. We have a similar story, The Blue Bead. However, due to time constraints, I was not able to come up with a worksheet on the blue bead. But when you're doing that lesson, keep in mind the description of the crocodile, his physical appearance, and the encounter that Sibia had with the crocodile, how she saved the Gujar woman from the crocodile. Also, the ironic events where she actually grieves over the loss of two brass pots, and in the end, and towards the end, when her mother asks her what happened, she says yes, something did happen, I found the blue bead. So it's important for you to do the character sketch of Sibia, where you have adjectives to describe her, and then use those, give adjectives, and then elaborate those adjectives by using examples from the text. Also, you could write about the fine things that she sees at the bazaar, or the things that the Kashmiri merchant was selling at the bazaar. So it's full of details. Give it a careful reading. In case there's a long question from there, remember, do not write the summary. You need to answer to the point. Okay, so all the best, do well, read your chapters well. This was all I could get you for your revision. I hope it is of some benefit to you. All the best.